Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 942. October the 30th, 2019, Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Alrighty, well it is Wednesday of course. That is the day that I have me some chicken. Every Wednesday I have some chicken and take out the trash. Not at the same time. I have the chicken, later I take out the trash. Works out very well. You should try it. Unless of course your garbage day is not on Wednesday, then don't try it. Alrighty. Let's go ahead and get started here with the news of the day, and we've got quite a bit. Alrighty, so it looks like George Papagalopoulos, it looks like he is going to be running for that seat in Katy Hill's district, which she, of course, has just vacated because she's caught up in that scandal, doesn't want to go through the ethics committee hearings where they're going to be talking about her being naked, hanging out with, cheating on her husband. She's got another affair going on. She's, got nude pics on the internet. She's smoking a bong. She's got an iron cross on her, whatever. All this stuff. She doesn't want to go through that in the ethics committee hearings, so she's stepping aside because she's a big distraction for the party. She's a party pooper, you might say. And so she's gone. And that opens up the door for Papagalopoulos, who's now been living in her district for over 1 year, which makes him eligible to run for that seat. Now, I think that Papagalopoulos has a very good chance of winning that seat. I believe it's somewhere in Orange County, which means it's probably got, some Republicans there. Katy Hill is one of them seats that were won by the Democrats in the midterm, this past midterm, with that little game they were playing with the ballot harvesting. She's one of them seats that came in like 3 or 4 days after, I believe, after the election. So she stole the seat anyway, and it's only good that she's kicked out of it. Now, I think that Papagalopoulos obviously wants the by the time that the election kicks in, certainly by, I think, spring or early summer of 2020, not that too far off, by that time I expect that we will have probably sorted out most of what Attorney General Barr and Durham and of course Horowitz and all the rest. We will have most of this stuff sorted out by then, because the indictments are going to start coming down here pretty soon, and the story of what actually happened in 2020 will be likely, most of it will be told or known or understood by probably spring or early summer of 2020. I think one thing that Barr, the reason I think that he's been giving Durham all the resources he wants is because I don't think that Attorney General Barr wants this investigation like a cloud hanging out there during the general election. I think he's probably told Durham to try to move quickly because he probably wants to have this thing wrapped up before the general election begins in the late spring, early summer of 2020. So that would be my guess. So by the time that Papagalopoulos begins running for the seat, a lot of this stuff is going to be out, including how he was one of the key figures that was set up, and of course they tried to destroy his life, tried to ruin his life, and so he will kind of be somewhere in that kind of hero status once all the facts come out. He will enjoy a much better status, and everybody will know who he is, and he'll have a much better status. In fact, he does now already. Than what he currently has, because the old paradigm is still hanging around, but by the spring, early summer of 2020, the old paradigm will probably be melted away, and Papagalopoulos will look kind of like a bit of a hero in all of this. Certainly he'll look like a good guy who got abused by the system. Who better to send to Congress than someone who's been abused by the system? And you can guess what committee he wants to sit on. And he's a smart guy. So I think Papagalopoulos, would be a very good member of Congress, and he would be great for California, a hell of a lot better than Katy Hill. Well, okay, so this next story, when I actually was going through my notes and putting my video together today, this story was 100% relevant, and it was the latest information. So let's go ahead and go through it, and I'll tell you what's happened since. Okay, so Pelosi's House impeachment resolution is a scam. We all know that. We just needed to see the details to know exactly how the scam was going to work. Of course, Trump's attorneys will be barred from participating. It will be basically the same rules as before. It's just going to be made public. Now, Nunes can ask questions if Schiff will let him. He can request witnesses if Schiff will approve of it. Other members can ask questions only if Schiff will allow it. And this is exactly the kind of thing you saw in the closed door. The only thing they're going to do is make it public. That's really the only thing that's going to change here. And of course, then they lay out that once they have these hearings or this vote and the hearing that follows, that it will go to the Senate Judiciary. And then, of course, there will be new rules that will come in play, and they will change again. And of course, telling us that this is all just a big scam. They're literally making this up as they go along. And of course, this whole thing is designed to feed the narrative, which is, remember, this is a media campaign. It's always been a media campaign, using their allies in the left-wing media to push their narrative, regardless of what it is. And this is just the latest narrative. It should also be noted, just as I've been telling you about day after day after day, as we go through these attempted coups, various efforts at attempted coups on President Trump, that the people behind this and have been behind this since the midterm election are the lawfare group. Lawyers from the lawfare group. There are 6 of them that after the midterms came into to the various committees, oversight, judiciary, and intelligence, have 6 lawfare attorneys, and they are the ones who are orchestrating the coup. They're the ones who are telling the members, Democrat members, the questions to ask. But in this particular case, as we now can see, the actual lawfare lawyers are going to be the ones asking the questions in this latest attempt at the congressional coup. And so they got the two lawyers that are assigned to Schiff's committee are going to be the primary questioners. And then if Republicans attempt to cross-examine any of the witnesses, Schiff will say, nope, sorry, you can't ask that question. Witness, you don't have to answer. That's exactly how it's going to be run. That's how it's been run. It's just going to be done in public. So this is what we're looking at. At least it was what we were looking at when this broke. But then, just about a half an hour, literally before I sat down to do this video, then we get another story that breaks, which tells us that Steny Hoyer, the majority leader, has now decided that he's not sure if they're going to have this vote now on Thursday or even Friday. He doesn't even really know now when he's going to have the vote. Apparently, Steny Hoyer is not totally on board with Madame Botox. This is not unusual. He has butted heads with Madame Botox before. Now, Steny Hoyer knows that this is a bad deal. He knows it's a crazy train going off the rails. He probably doesn't even want to be a part of it because he's a fairly rational, not such in his policies, but he's rational in his understanding of how these processes work. He's also a fairly decent, has a decent understanding of how politics works, and he already knows that this is hurting Democrats. It's hurting them in all over the country, especially in 50 or 55 seats where Democrats won seats where Trump won their state or Trump won that district. And these people are coming to Steny Hoyer. You know, you can't go to Madame Botox. You know, you don't get into Madame Botox's office unless you're really special. But they can go see Steny Hoyer, and I guarantee you they're climbing all over him. And they're not happy about the fact that they're being pressured to vote for this. And they're probably telling Steny Hoyer, I just got my seat here less than a year ago, and you want me to go out and literally cast a vote that will absolutely cost me my seat. Why in the world are we doing this? This is what he's hearing. And he knows it's true. So at this point, it looks as though this vote that's supposed to happen to adopt these new rules, which we just went through. They're not really new rules at all. They just go public with what they've been doing. It appears that this is now not 100% certain it's going to happen, because it looks like now that Steny Hoyer understands what a disastrous course that they're on, and he's probably butting heads with Madame Botox. And he's probably listening to his members. And so he has to go to Pelosi now and say, man, I've just had 50 or 60 members in my office, and they're telling me literally that, you know, if they vote for this and they're being pressured to, you might as well hand those 50 seats back to the Republicans. We could lose control. But I think that Pelosi is so hell-bent that she thinks it's worth it. She thinks it's worth it. Because I guess in some Democrats' minds, they believe if they can throw enough dirt on Trump, that it might be able to hurt him enough that they might be able to beat him. But I just don't think that that's the way it looks. And if you look at the polls, I saw a poll yesterday, only 36% of people who are polled, and again, I'm not a huge poll guy, but there is a poll out there that says 36% do not, only 36% support the House moving on with this impeachment inquiry, or hearings, or whatever you want to call them. They can't seem to decide whether it's an inquiry, whether it's hearings, whether it's impeachment, whether it's not impeachment. It's completely foggy. Nobody can seem to understand, because Pelosi can't seem to make it, she can't clarify exactly what the hell this is. And Steny Hoyer certainly can't. And now it looks like he's pushing back. So, are the hearings on? Are the hearings off? Are these the rules? Are the rules going to change? These Democrats, these 50 Democrats, do not want to take that vote. It's political suicide, and everybody knows it. And Hoyer knows it. And therein lies the problem. So what we have is Steny Hoyer and Madame Botox butting heads. Pelosi will probably win the fight because she controls, you know, more power than he does. But it's going to be a very awkward the way this is going to happen, and you are going to see. I would not be surprised. I mean, they're going to put a lot of pressure on these Democrats, but you're going to have some Democrats who are not going to vote for this. They'll probably get the votes to pass it, because I don't think that Hoyer would bring it up unless they had the votes. I mean, that would be stupid, wouldn't it, to go ahead and for Pelosi to come out and make the announcement, we're going to have this vote, and then not actually be able to pass it. She must have felt that she had the votes to get it done, as long as she didn't use the word impeachment, or as long as she didn't use the word hearing or something. She thinks by wording it a certain way, or projecting it a certain way, that would give these Democrats enough cover. But obviously, they don't agree. Obviously, they don't think this gives them enough cover. Because when it's all said and done, what the left-wing media is going to report is that, hey, there's just been a vote on impeachment hearings. And they know exactly this is how it's going to be played. And that means that's the kiss of death for them in their seats. So, clearly, Hoyer and Pelosi are at odds. And so right now, I don't know what's going to happen. I have no clue. Apparently, neither does anybody else, including the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader in the House. They don't seem to know. They think they know, but they don't know. Because now it's all back up in the air again. What a shit show. My God, these people are incompetent. Whew. Chuck Grassley. Grassley is seeking the identity of State Department staffers who transmitted classified information to and from the rotten Reverend Clinton's private server. 38 were cited for nearly 600 violations, and Grassley wants the names of these individuals so he can make criminal referrals. Yes, that's right, good old Chuck. I like Chuck, having a little fun with him there, but he's a pretty honest guy. I generally like Chuck Grassley. Of course, he was the one that was really pushing the investigation into the Clinton emails back when he controlled, back when he was in control of the other committee that he's not in control of anymore, the Judiciary, I think. So anyway, Grassley is seeking the identity of the State Department staffers who transmitted the classified information to and from the Rotten Reverend Clinton's private server. As we know from this recent report that came out, they found that 38 people were cited for nearly 600 violations of transmitting classified information illegally. And so now Grassley wants the IG to present him with the names of these staffers so that he can make criminal referrals against them. That's right, you make criminal referrals against them, and if the DOJ decides to take it up and these people are looking at some sort of criminal violation, maybe they start talking. That's kind of what Chuck's thinking. We'll see how that goes. Well, it looks like the number 2 at ISIS, not only did they get Baghdadi, but it looks like they got the number 2 guy as well. He seems to have been taken out by a drone. He was riding in a truck with some other guys. They've now been French fried. They're like human French fries. They've been taken out. And apparently, yeah, drones, they were in a truck and they got hit with a drone, a missile fired by a drone. And there is some video of that. But they have not released the name of this person, although it's being speculated. They have a pretty good idea who it is, but the Trump administration officially hasn't said the name. They know it, they know the name, but they haven't officially said the name. But other people know who this person likely is, and his name is out there. It's nobody you would know. It's just some crazy yabba dabba doo guy. Who cares? It's the number 2 guy in ISIS, and he's dead, and probably a couple of his buddies. Good, and they probably destroyed the truck as well, and that's probably good. So, next up we have Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch. Well, he has finally gotten some emails and text from Peter's been stroking us and Loose Lisa Page that he has been trying to get his hands on for quite some time, right along with Nunes and a couple other, I guess Goodlat's committee was trying to get these. Judicial Watch has been trying to get these for nearly a year. So he finally gets these texts and emails from Loose Lisa Page and Peter's been stroking us, and it shows, these emails show that Bruce Orr and Peter's been stroking us were working together regularly, meeting together regularly, meeting with the Loose Lisa Page, Bruce Schwartz, and others, including after the November 2016 election. That means Peter's been stroking us was lying. And that means Bruce Orr, not 100% truthful in his testimony. Now, the thing about this is just some of these emails, because as Tom Fitton has explained before, to get these emails, you have to give like real specific stuff that you want. You can't just say, give me all the Page Strzok emails. There's thousands of them that we have never been able to get. And that's why it's like finding a needle in a haystack. You don't know exactly what email you're specifically looking for, but that's what they want you to know before you can do the FOIA. Otherwise, can you be more specific? We're not going to give you all of it. So this is the problem that's always been there. Now, of course, Mr. Durham, I'm sure he can get he can get the entire catalog of Loose Lisa Page and Peter's been stroking us emails and texts, and including probably some we don't even know exist. But think about that. There are thousands, with everything that we know about Loose Lisa Page and Peter's been stroking us from the texts and emails that were released. Think about this. There are thousands and thousands more which we have not been able to get. Now, how damaging do you think they are? There's a reason why we have not been able to get them. Horowitz couldn't get them. Nunes couldn't get them. Goodlat's committee couldn't get them. These are some very, very damaging emails and texts. Now, Fitton just narrowed it down and was able to get some of these, which show this. But as he says on his weekly broadcast, I was just watching like 2 days ago, in his weekend review, there are thousands and thousands and thousands more of Page Strzok texts and emails that they can't get, that are there. And as he said, hopefully Durham is able to get those. Because you can bet there's a lot more there than what we even know. Well, this is very interesting. I don't know how many of you heard Joe DeGeneva on radio this morning, but he was on the same radio show he's on almost every morning, and he's telling the host on that show that he can verify that Clapper is lying when he says that he didn't make this comment about to David Ignatius, the fake news reporter, to take the kill shot on Flynn. And DeGeneva says that the way that happened was that Clapper was actually in a car. He was in a government vehicle, and he had a driver. And it was the driver who disclosed that Clapper made that comment. And they were able to look at the time or what have you and determine that, in fact, it was Clapper. And he was in his car, in a government car, and a driver is the one who verified that he said this to David Ignatius. Now, as DeGeneva points out, the only way that you would get that kind of testimony from a driver in a car who would have been there at the time when Clapper made the call is if he was subpoenaed in front of a grand jury. So this tells Joe DeGeneva that it appears almost 99% certainty at this point that there has been a grand jury impaneled, and that's likely how you would get this kind of information. Clapper was in a car making the call to this fake news reporter David Ignatius when he made that statement to get the kill shot on Flynn because of a driver. We know that, and that, as DeGeneva says, almost certainly means that that kind of information is what you would get, and that kind of a witness would require usually like a grand jury, and that's how that kind of testimony would come out. It's obviously being leaked to Sidney Powell, who obviously has got someone high up in the DOJ or within the Durham or investigation or within Barr's office, some white hat, somebody who is feeding her this information. And, of course, DeGeneva and his wife are friends with Sidney Powell, and they talk to her probably every day. That's how he's learning these things. Lee Smith, his book came out today. Yesterday, the 29th. I will be ordering this book, and I will be reading this book chapter by chapter and sharing what I learn from it with you. I'll be getting the book this weekend. I'll be ordering the book this weekend. I love Lee Smith. I've got two of his books. We got two books out there by Jarrett, Greg Jarrett. We got two books by Bongino. We just had Kim Strassel's book come out. Of course, we have the other book by what's his name, the prosecutor. Forget his name, but we got his book out there. Andy McCarthy. But Lee Smith is like the cream de la cream of investigative journalists. I have two of his books. I can tell you, when you buy one of his books, his sources in the back part of the book will be thicker than the book itself. This dude sources to death, and that's why I like his books, because it really helps me with my TowerGate timeline. It helps me with my videos because I like to source things as much as possible. And it's his books are like the great reference material. If you have some fact and you can't remember what the source was, or you need to verify it or prove it, man, if you got one of his books on one of these topics, you can go through the book and you can find all the sourcing real easily, and you can go back and resource something that you may have forgotten before. So nobody sources or digs deeper than Lee Smith. He's a very, very deep digging type journalist. He's not trying to get the first book out. Everyone else has put books out ahead of him. He'll take his time and take as long as it takes to dig till he gets to the bottom, till there's nowhere else to dig anywhere in any other direction. He's got everything he can possibly dig for. And then he's very good at taking the stuff he's uncovered, and he's very good at then looking at it, capsulating all of it, and putting it into some sort of a frame of reference and explaining it and tying it and connecting the dots. He's top notch. You do not get any better than Lee Smith. I will be getting that book, and I'll be sharing what I learned from it with you. We're already learning some things because he's already doing interviews, excerpts he's putting out there. So Lee Smith, in this book, says that Michael Flynn, this is pretty much what we all know, Lee Smith says that Flynn was set up. And he was set up because he was going to launch an intelligence review of special operations And that would have unearthed the plot. So they had no choice but to fire him and then take him out. Set him up. So Flynn, the Obama administration, found out that he was getting ready to conduct a investigation and intelligence review of special operations being conducted because he probably smelled a rat. And remember, he was in the Obama administration at that time, Michael Flynn. And that is why Lee Smith says he was fired, and that is why they went after him to frame him, to punish him. He was going to expose, he was on to the coup very early on. Probably didn't know it was a coup at that point, but he was definitely on to the fact that there were things going on that shouldn't have been going on, and he was getting ready to conduct an intelligence review that likely would have unearthed the plot in its early stages and would have upset the apple cart. He had to be fired, and then taken out. That's going to be explained in detail, backed up with documents and evidence in Lee Smith's book. Can't wait to get it. We have the Gateway Pundit saying that Comey likely doctored his memos in an effort to take down Trump. He says that the U.S. Senate may have the evidence because they have the original memos. So the question is, does the original memos that the Senate has, do they match with the memos that were released by Daniel Richman? And that's likely going to be something we will learn from the IG report. That would likely be in the IG report. They will know if Comey's original memos that we were led to believe were the ones that were leaked to Richman, if we find out that in fact, and then later he also provided memos to the Mueller team, and of course you remember they did that raid on his house. So we had 3 different looks at Comey memos, and apparently it's looking like, according to Gateway Pundit sources, that Comey had doctored the original memos to fit the narrative to provide the hook for Mueller via Daniel Richman leaking them. And so it looks like Comey may have manipulated his own memos to help set the plot in motion to get the special counsel. And it's looking like that the Senate may have the other set of memos, the original set, which would show the original set and the altered set, and this would likely be something the IG would also have as well. We'll see if it shows up in the IG report. Doctored Comey memos. Well, more bad news for Quid Pro Quo Joe. It looks like a Catholic priest named Father Robert Morey, who's in South Carolina, has refused to give Biden communion. And he's actually written a statement, a public statement, where he explains why he would not offer or administer communion to Joe Biden. And he says it has to do with Joe Biden's views on abortion. His abortion views. That's the reason that he could not get communion. I'm not Catholic, but I assume that's a big deal if you're Catholic. Well, what do we have here? It looks like they have decided to have a general election in the UK. That is going to happen on December the 12th. Well, I think they have to have a vote first in the House of Lords or something. So it looks like, assuming that this vote passes, and it appears that it's going to, they will be having a general election on December 12th in the UK to elect new parliamentary members. Now, if you look at, who has the largest parties, the Conservative Party is by far the largest party, and then you got the Brexit Party, and then you still have a little bit of UKIP left. So those 3 together, and you probably also have some other groups that are within the Lib Dem Party, which you probably have some leavers there, mostly Remainers probably, but a lot of leavers. And you'll have some Remainers, of course, in the Conservative Party as well. But if you look at the who holds who has the largest amount of people in their party, the size of the parties, this would appear to me anyway. And I'm not an expert on UK politics, but I've looked at the graph that shows, how many members are in these various parties, and they have like 6 or 7 parties in the UK, like 3 major parties, and then 3 or 4 other that are minor parties. And it looks to me like this should be a win for conservatives and Boris. That doesn't necessarily mean it will be a win for Brexit. Again, it's going to be close, I think, but I think it's a good thing. I would think at this point. I think that the turnout for people who support Brexit will be really, really high. And I think that there's probably a lot of conservative MPs that are going to be under a lot of pressure. UKIP will show up in force. That the Brexit Party, Farage's party, will show up in force. So I think they're going to have good voter turnout on the Brexit side. I think they certainly have the numbers on the conservative side. So it should be very good. And hopefully, once that election's over and they have more votes that would support an actual Brexit, maybe they can get an actual Brexit. And I think this, to me, looks like the last ditch. Because if this doesn't work, if this doesn't succeed, then you're going to go on for probably another year or 2. And that will give the establishment time to cook up another vote, another referendum. And a clean type, real Brexit won't be on the ballot. That is what they'll try to do. So we've kicked the can down the road for another 3 months, or at least wait until December. We will have to see what happens. Lee Smith again. He now agrees with Nunes, who's recently come out in the past few months. Excuse me. Nunes, who's come out in the last few months and said that he doesn't think Steele wrote the dossier. Lee Smith is now saying he too doesn't think Steele wrote the dossier, and he thinks he has the evidence to prove it. I've been saying that Steele didn't write the dossier for over a year and a half now. I figured that out about a year and a half ago. Just through public media reports and just sitting there looking at the situation. It's for a lot of reasons. I don't have time to go. I've only got 2 minutes. I don't have time to go into it. For a lot of reasons, I figured out a year and a half ago Steele didn't write the dossier. Now, Lee Smith, Nunes brought it up on Bartiromo about 2 or 3 months ago, and now Lee Smith out there doing his TV appearances to promote his book is also saying, nah, Steele didn't write the dossier. They're catching up to me, my friends. Well, a Bloomberg story has just come out on this Monday, this past Monday, and they're saying that Biden may come in either 3rd or 4th place in Iowa. So the story from Bloomberg comes out on Monday saying that Biden may come in 3rd or 4th in Iowa, which would be pretty bad, pretty embarrassing, because he ain't going to win New Hampshire. Guess what occurred 3 days prior to Bloomberg writing the story to tell us that Biden may come in 3rd or 4th in Iowa? The Rotten Reverend Clinton was in Iowa 3 to 4 days before the story was written, and she was meeting with the Democratic caucus and the number 1 top Democrat committee guy in the top Democrat leader in the state of Iowa, the Rotten Reverend Clinton. That's who she was meeting with. And then 3 days later, you get the story from Bloomberg saying that Biden may come in 3rd or 4th in Iowa. The Rotten Reverend Clinton, she's working it hard. Do you think Biden has any clue at all, that the Rotten Reverend Clinton is on his ass and getting ready to take him out? I think he's too stupid to realize it. Okay, I don't have time to get into any more Lee Smith, but there is some more stuff I was going to talk about. Too late, no time. Hopefully I'll be able to get into that tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you guys. Bye.